open.
I have less stuff open, but I'll try to.
I occasionally run into a problem with, especially with the second monitor plugged in, that I have. Hello and welcome, my scaly friends, to Scarlet Citadel Wednesdays, the only show on the internet that talks all about the Scarlet Citadel Kickstarter by Kobold Press on our Twitch channel. You can find our Scarlet Citadel project on Kickstarter right now. My name is Amanda Hammond, and I am the editorial director for Kobold Press. I have a very special guest with me here today. Please introduce yourself, Mr. Kobold in Chief.
Sure. I'm Wolfgang Baur. I am the founder and Kobold in Chief here at Kobold Press. It's my little baby and has been for 14 years, and I don't know where the time has gone, but it's all grown. It's a surly teenager now, Amanda.
Oh, no. Are you finding it difficult to deal with as a surly teenager?
I don't know. It's growing in interesting ways. It's doing new things. It's launching projects I wasn't expecting and wearing a lot of black. That's what it's doing.
And I feel like you're talking about me right now, and it's also a scene.
Could be, maybe.
But that's fine. You notice he only uses the word surly and teenager, not of control, when I'm hosting the show. I see what you're about, Mr. Baur.
I thought I was so stealthy and sneaky, but so clearly subtlety is not my thing.
Right. So we've got just a week and some change left of this exciting project, Scarlet Citadel, which, as you mentioned, does go very far back into the history of Kobold Press, into your personal game, with folks who've been involved in the project from the very beginning, including Steve Winter, who is our Kobold master and game designer extraordinaire on this project.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Steve is kicking butt. And I'm glad he was on the stream last week, right?
He was on the stream, yes, last week, and then we will have him on the 14th, so a week from today, to answer any final questions that folks have. Let us know how things are going. You know, we may have some stretch goals that are further unlocked at that point that you might be working hard to finish.
Yeah, we'll see how it pops in the last week. It's always an exciting time. But the Scarlet Citadel, it goes way back. Back in prior editions of D&D, and has gotten play a number of times with different groups. I'm excited because some of the stretch goals that we're doing are sort of resources and handouts and stuff that I never had when I was just running it at home. It's better to have those sorts of resources than an art director and a professional cartographer, you know?
Absolutely, right? You were just there at home, just standing up in front of people, making up stuff and coming up with even more diabolical traps, which we've heard somewhat about from Steve. He spilled the beans a little bit on that.
Good. Oh, he's nailed it. A couple of those were, I think from my notes, but couple are way more devious than I ever was. So he's the right guy for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, you're talking about some of the final text that we've just recently seen with some interesting and exciting things, especially at the very bottom of the dungeon.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to spoil anything from the bottom layer. I think I want to, but
Oh,
even on the top layers, there's great stuff. The Arcane Scriptorium is full of goodness. There's a sequence in there that's pretty much all Steve. And it reminds me a little bit of the Castle Shadowcrag, Black Wind for super fans who remember that, where player characters get sucked out of one location and into a little bit of a whirlwind of, how much do I want to say?
say it all, Wolfgang. You're live on the air.
Yeah, I know. But it's one of his best set pieces, and I don't want to give it all away because part of it is the fun. But basically, yes, you show up in this wonderful lost scriptorium. There are some mechanical servants. There's all these scrolls, all this knowledge. It's an old library packed with elvish magic. It's rich. It's full of power. And then something goes a little bit wrong, and the players need to figure out what happened and how can they undo it. And it sort of reminds me, sort of in theme or flavor, of one of those, oh god, what is it? It's Mickey Mouse and the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where he's just trying to mess around with the magic stuff. And
And
next thing you know,
wrong, yeah.
everything's gone wrong. So that sequence reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Where the
kind of a
players,
Maud of Wonder effect, right? Where it's just
yeah,
random and something happens.
yes, there's a beautiful random table and something happens. And as a game master, it also reminds me a little bit of Queen of the Demon Web Pits,
Hmm.
where there's some other planar visitations. You wind up in a lot of mysterious locations outside the dungeon. Sort of.
Yeah. That's a great segue, because today we were going to primarily talk about the additional material that we're adding to the book, stretch
Yes.
goals, both in written content, but also we have lots of cool art pieces and other map elements that have also unlocked as well. And we are looking forward into the future to potentially unlock even some more things.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I can rattle off some of the stuff that the backers have already funded that's like
yeah,
guaranteed for this project, right?
yeah,
We
why
can
don't
go
we do
through.
that?
All
Yeah.
right, that's easy. One of them is what I was sort of hinting at earlier, is character point of view art.
Mm-hmm.
Some players may remember that this was fairly common in the 70s and 80s, where you would get a dungeon adventure and a booklet of illustrations that you were meant to show to the players and go, here, you see this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even up till, oh gosh, very recently, I was still doing that when I didn't
And
have
more recently,
time to print out my stuff.
right? Like some
Yeah.
game masters still do it.
Yep.
It's
You
like,
go to
well,
it's like holding up the bestiary or the monster manual and be like, you see this in your
you
hand.
see
It's just
this monster,
covering the
right?
stats. Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
all right, there's a guy in the room and
He looks
he's
like this.
here. He's got this sword and he's dark and mysterious, right? And it's like, oh, okay,
Exactly.
that guy, he looks creepy. What are we going to do about him? Well, that's one of the stretch goals that makes a game master's life easier. And it's included, I think we funded 6 of these pieces and we're hoping for 3 more.
Yeah.
Plus
Yeah.
some player handouts of, hey, this is a clue, this is a document, this is an item. So all of that stuff, I think, makes a game much more immersive.
It does, yeah. And speaking of immersivity, I was, going to mention at the top of your conversation as well that all of this stuff is also included in the VTT licenses. So for Roll20
Yes.
Grounds, these player handouts, those of you who have built those before know that it takes some time, and then you've got to find it and you've got to show it to all the players. That's all done for you. You just hit a button and you can show the players what it is that they see.
Yeah, it's preloaded. The minute they find it, you say, here it is. Or the minute they enter the room with the trap, you say, it looks like this. Do you want to go in? Which,
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely. Right. And another piece that has unlocked as well is the digital map pack, which is something that a lot
Yes.
of folks find very, very useful as they're running games online.
Yeah, well, that's meant for pretty much anyone. It's not even for
Hmm.
virtual tabletops necessarily. If you're just running via Zoom or Skype or, right,
Yeah.
if you're just running a game without using Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or anything like that, you can still share those images, right? And those are maps um, without numbering. They're player friendly.
Yes.
So
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to go in
it's
there and try and Photoshop out things. And yeah,
no, it's
I,
all right there. And you don't have like tokens and stats and everything preload, but it's still useful. So that map pack has been unlocked. Um, but we've been talking about visuals. I want to talk about like content a little bit. Like one of
Cool.
the early goals was unlocking the Red Tower PDF for
Yeah.
all backers.
Yes.
And so this is something, I don't think it's necessarily, well, for all backers at 20 bucks and up. You can't pledge $1 and get like $20 worth of free stuff. Anyway,
You can try,
Red
but it
Tower, it won't work. You can pledge $1, you'll get all the updates. But no, Red Tower is one of the Warlock booklets. We do this zine with
yes.
Patreon. And the Red Tower one was issue number 20 in the zine. And I wrote a chunk of it, and Victoria Jasko wrote some of it, and Mike Wellham wrote a bunch of monsters. There's a lot of stuff in it. I think it's like 32 or 40 pages worth.
Yeah.
And every patron gets it. And not like 6 months or a year from now, like
Yes.
when the Kickstarter closes a week later, like we'll send you the PDF. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
nice. It's got all the lore, the history, the background of the Scarlet Citadel. The village nearby is called Red Tower. All the inhabitants there, the adventure hook. You know, you're basically getting an introduction to the area around the adventure.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I thought was fun and kind of sneaky is that all of that material was getting put together and then Warlock 20 released. And it wasn't very much longer until the Kickstarter was announced. But for a short period of time, there wasn't really any indication that this was going to be such part of such a big project, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're a part of that Patreon, you really get a ground level view of some of the stuff that's coming up for our big projects.
Oh yeah, they got the early look, all the patrons on that. And there's a timeline of the area around the Citadel. The cover art by Justine Jones is wonderful.
Oh, it's yeah, so old school, really speaks
It's
to the
really
theme.
old school. We wanted someone who could do something that, I mean, Mark, the art director, wanted something that kind of evoked the village of Hamlet kind of feel.
Oh yeah, because we all knew that that was a callback that most of us remember having played long time ago. So that's very important
Right?
to our hearts.
It's very much that. And it's
Yeah,
not like you need to know anything about Hamlet for this. It's just like, well, here's a village
yeah,
and it's got some mysterious stuff.
yeah.
And
It's an archetypical thing, right? I mean,
yes,
having the village that's next to the adventuring place, that's the place that you go and you can get stuff. And then there are other things that might draw you within the story and the plot of the Citadel itself.
yep. Yeah, well, certainly the history tells you something about how this dungeon came to be. The description of the village tells you who are the people, who's in charge, why does it need a wooden palisade, why is it called Red Tower.
Yes, yeah.
It's it's a nice grounding thing with enough room for a game master to riff on it the way they'd like, and a really nice 2-page map
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
by
I want to
Dice
get
and Logos.
into I want to get into all the other content that we've got because these
Yeah,
are
yeah.
chapters that we're talking about. These are chunky new chapters that we've added to the book.
Yes.
But I also wanted to take a moment to remind our friends watching us and in chat that we are happy to answer questions. If you hear us talk about something cool and you have a thought that you'd like to share, please throw that into chat. Please ask us questions about the project. We will be happy to answer those throughout the show and also at the end of the show if there's something that we haven't gotten to. So these content chapters that we've unlocked as stretch goals,
Yes.
you mentioned we've got the Red Tower write-up, which was written by Victoria Jasko.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also got a lore article that was written by yourself, Wolfgang.
Oh yeah, I wrote the history and the timeline because I wrote it basically to hand off to Steve, and then I realized, well, this is a pretty fun thing. What if we shared it with the Warlock patrons. And now, of course, it's going to be brought into the hardcover. So the adventure lore, I don't know what it's going to be, 10 pages worth in the front. I feel like a giant hypocrite because normally I say all that lore is stuff the game master or the designer needs to write for themselves and then throw away because players will never learn half of it.
Yep. It's something that you develop for yourself because you like to do that sort of thing when you're the game master.
Except that Scarlet Citadel, some of that lore comes right back and bites adventurers in the butt. So
now that's interesting.
Some of it's still relevant.
Yeah. No, that does make a lot of sense, especially looking at the timeline of the major events that are influencing what's happening at the Citadel, what has happened at the Citadel, and what you can find there as far as ruins and evidence of other groups. Now, this thing started out, it's got a history going back more than 600 years. Is that correct?
That is correct. More than 600 is.
More than. And which it started as was an elven hunting lodge. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in the middle of the White Forest, which is this sort of idyllic, deep, dark fort, kind of like the Margrave, but elsewhere in the setting. And not a lot of people live there. The elves did, and they said it's a lovely place to go hunt boar or deer or just chase around and make sure that your gnomish servants bring a picnic and you float down the stream. There's a lovely river nearby. And it's tranquil and lovely. And oh, by the way, there's all these magical connections around there. So, well, of course the elves like it. It's easy to magic your way in, magic your way out, have your picnic, feel superior. Yes.
There's lots of animals. It's very pretty.
It's very pretty. It's loaded with ancient power and, it's theirs and no one else knows about it. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
How elvish of them.
Exactly. That's Oh, go ahead. I don't want to.
Except, of course, eventually somebody did find out.
And then some things happened. So you mentioned that this is a nexus of ley power, ley line power being a very important thing in the Midgard campaign setting.
Yep.
And Steve talked about that a bit as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But what are you envisioning for how that came together from a setting perspective?
Well, from a setting perspective, ley lines don't really cross or flow into each other that often. The major ones are like major rivers, right? They have their own region. They tend to be, and smaller ones flow into them. And there are ways in which they connect, but you rarely see 2 or 3 ley lines like at a crossroads. If you look at the ley line map, you'll see they just don't cross much.
Yeah.
The Scarlet Citadel is a big exception. It connects sort of in a way, if you know what you're doing, 3 major ley lines. And if you're not running a Midgard campaign, all that really matters here is it's a nexus of magical energy. You don't have to say ley lines. You don't have to retool your magic system or anything. All you need to say is the sort of classic, why is the Wizard's Tower here? Because it's a great spot for magical resonance.
He was able to draw power, and that's why all these strange things happened here.
Exactly, right? Like we're familiar with that. But if you are using the Midgard setting, then you have another layer of both rules and lore that you can work with. Right?
Absolutely, and that's a great way for us to talk about Active Nick's question in chat. Who wants to know, for DMs playing in Midgard, or where would this adventure take place?
Well, if you're playing in Midgard, this is south of the Magdar Kingdom, east of Triolo, north of the Griffin Crags, in the White Forest. The Midgard map online, which I believe the URL is just midgardmap.koboldpress.com.
Yeah. It's a beautiful geographic view of everything.
Right? It's got a nice zoom in view of the area. And if you type in Scarlet Citadel, it's been on that map since we first published it in 2012, I want to say. So
yeah.
We haven't been hiding the Scarlet Citadel. It's just we haven't told anyone anything about it, except a little bit in the world book. It's easy to move. If your campaign is set in Zobek and you want to run the Scarlet Citadel out of the Margrave, you can, right? Your players probably won't know that you've shifted it. Or if you're playing in Dornig and you want to move it to the Arbanes, go for it. But
Yeah.
that's the canonical location, because it's right in between sort of three kingdoms, all of which mostly ignore it except to harvest timber from the forest.
Yes. However, there are influences from some of those kingdoms and some of those groups that are within that area, which is interesting. We did talk about the elves,
Sure.
but the dwarves also have a history with this complex.
Yes, they do. Um,
Look at
so
you laugh.
the dwarves are my favorite in Midgard, because they're not Lord of the Rings dwarves, all noble and tragic. They're a little more grubby and mercenary in Midgard, right? Like they show up and they're like, "What's in it for us?" Which maybe some of the Middle Earth dwarves do too. But Midgard dwarves are quite mercenary, and the ones nearby in both the Iron Crags and in the city-state of Milana, sometimes they're just one step removed from bandits.
They're in mercenary companies and they traverse the roads and they find jobs and sometimes they find other stuff. It's not their
Yeah,
fault.
exactly. And one day, some disgruntled apprentice tells them about some tower full of magic, and their ring mage, if you know Midgard dwarves, you know they love ring magic.
Oh
The
yeah.
ring mage says, "Hey, that'd be great. Why don't we go check that out? A source of magical power." They go. They find the wizard who's running things, and they say, "Hi, we're your new friends." And I'm sort of picturing the scene to myself. It still amuses me. He's like, "No, no, I've got plenty of friends. I'm a lonely wizard. I live out here in the forest for a reason. Shove off." And they're like, "No, we're your new friends." And they sort of take over the place, right? Like the
Yeah.
wizard still lives there. He does his magic stuff, but the ring mages show up. They start enchanting a lot of things. They use it as their base for banditry. They start breeding owl bears. That's a whole
Yes,
nother
they do.
story.
Breeding
um,
owlbears, that's interesting. That was also a stretch goal that was unlocked was
yes.
owlbear magic items and some
Oh,
owlbear art that we posted on the updates.
Scott Gable wrote these magic items, and I so wish I had written them. They're so great. They're the most disgusting consumable item I've ever seen in D&D.
Yes, they are.
Um,
They're great in the sense that you read them and you realize what they are and you go, oh, and then you keep reading it and you go, yeah, but I want to eat one.
right? So they're called Bezoars, Bezoar.
Yeah, which is actually a thing. That is a
It's
word in medical terminology that means something, doesn't it, Wolfgang?
Yeah, it does. It's sort of something that's half digested, typically used for owls, but I think it could also be used to refer to like hairballs, stuff that gets eaten, half digested, and spit back up is
Yes.
called a bezoar. And it's completely gross, but apparently it's used in biology classes these days. You can dissect a
You
bezoar.
dissect them. Yeah, yeah. And it
Yeah,
tells you all about the animal's diet and its
right? Like
ecology and its region and
little mouse bones in there, feathers, fur,
yeah.
all the indigestible stuff. And so when an owl bear eats, oh, I don't know, some sheep, a halfling, whatever,
Yeah,
um, you know,
you know,
yeah,
ogre pede's right arm. There's all
yeah,
kinds of things that it might pick up.
some familiar it should have left alone. Whatever it eats, and then it spits back up some portion of it. It's a very compact pellet, like a fist-sized pellet, which
Yes.
can be manipulated and enchanted and made into something like a gross, gross, gross potion. Um, that others, only adventurers would think to do this, can eat and take some magic into themselves. And
Yeah,
what I love about them is they're like long-lasting potions, right? And I don't
they
know how much
are.
it, we didn't reveal all of this in our update,
We did not. We posted a couple of sample bazaars
but we
and
didn't give the
favorite.
general rules for them, right?
No, we did not.
Oh,
No.
so I'm
I think
spoiling
only
all
for
that. Well,
well, I mean, it's sort of logical, right? That if you've
it
got this
is.
thing that's been spit up that has a magical effect, you're gonna
Yes.
have to put it inside you for it to work.
I know. I love that part. So anyway, yes, you know that every single adventurer is like, well, what kind of pluses do I get?
Yeah. Yeah.
What mechanical bonus is this giving me? And as soon as they hear that part, they're like, oh, well, I want that. Um,
Yes, and the magic only lasts a certain amount of time. You've got to swallow the thing.
mhm.
It does some damage to you because it's really gross going down. It
Yeah,
sits in your belly, it does the thing, and then it becomes inert. And then you got to hork it back up because it's not supposed to be there.
you don't want that massive whatever undigested cat claws for what you don't want that passing
Fingernail.
through. Yeah. And
Oh no.
so anyway, disgusting magic item. Thank you, Scott, for inventing those. I think he wrote like 6 or 8 different ones, all of which will be in an appendix with the other magic items from
Yeah.
the Citadel, which includes void magic,
Yes.
and I don't know what else we've unlocked in terms of magical items, but at least those two.
Yes, Void Magic, Owlbear, and Owlbear Magic, which are the Bazaars, which I
Mhm.
think we said that in the update, so that's not a huge spoiler.
Yep.
And yeah, so looking ahead, we have got the Clacking Caverns, which is a whole another area sidetrack within the Scarlet
Yes.
Citadel. Now, this is a place that we know what it is because we've written it up, or we've written up the update anyway, what it is,
Yep.
but how much do we want to tell people?
Well,
Wolfgang's like, none of it. Moving on.
a little bit of it. Like the Clacking Caverns, I'll just fess up that the reason they exist and they're called the Clacking Caverns is like the Mummy, the version from like 2000.
I'm glad you said that. Yes, the
Yeah,
Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz Mummy, which is one of my favorites.
that wonderful movie, which is apparently a remake of like some mummy from the 1930s.
It is, yeah, yeah,
But
it
I
is.
don't know. I never watched the original. I'm not that old, but I saw the one 20 years ago with and it was fantastic. And there is a scene with scarab beetles that come out of the tomb and eat everything. And if you've ever seen the movie, you're like, wow, what a D&D moment,
Yeah,
right? Like
it's an
how
actual swarm that
it's an
actually
actual
eats people.
right. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, and just running it for my group, I'm like, well, I think most of my group knows that scene. I think it's a very effective scene. I think if it shows up and they can't just smash their way out of it with hammers and swords, it's going to be interesting. So I
Yeah,
said, fine. The Clacking Cavern is named after a beetle swarm. Um,
the clacker beetle, if I
yes, the Clacker beetle, which we will have fully statted for 5th edition.
yeah.
Um, and it's not a swarm. I mean, you can waste your time with it if you want. For me as a game master, there are certain encounters where it's like, if the party wants to burn resources on this, let
They
them.
can. Or they can just leave the chamber.
Right. Or they could go away
Yes.
and
It's like
not,
quicksand, right? It's like almost
yeah,
an environmental hazard, in all seriousness. That's so
right. It is. Quicksand and rushing rivers and poison gas. It's like, okay, you could stand in a room full of poison gas if you want. You're heroic adventurers. You've got tons of hit points. Why
yeah,
would you, right? Like
sure.
you don't have to. Um, so I was hoping, of course, that the beetle swarm would convince people to move along and not spend all their time looting a single tomb for hours, because I would like this tomb looting sequence to move along faster.
Yep.
And it sort of worked, but of course, D&D heroes don't like to retreat ever.
No, they don't. And you, as the game master, I've done this a million times to get my players to move the heck along because you're not supposed to waste time in the tavern. You're supposed to go to the adventure. The adventure's not in the tavern. Quit paying attention to everything in the tavern.
I
Why are you
know.
asking me who's in the tavern? I don't care. It doesn't matter.
I've since reconsidered my opinion on this. My new opinion is they're enjoying the tavern. I could be enjoying the tavern. Who's
Yes.
in the tavern? Someone who will entertain me as well as them, right?
That is normally my take as well, except for when you're
Yeah.
running an on-stream game and you're like, you guys, we have 45 minutes
We have
left.
45 minutes and we do want to get actually down the stairs into the
Yes.
dungeon here. Yeah.
So,
So it depends. But it was supposed to be a move them along kind of thing, and it sort of works. There's other things in the Clacking Caverns that I found are more effective, like mysterious lights or the
yep.
floating pools of fish,
Yep.
which are just so freakish and weird. They're sort of like ponds that float, and they have got glowing cave fish in them.
Yeah, and I had kind of envisioned them based on the description, kind of like flying anglerfish, which is terrifying. But with
Yes.
that bulb that's hanging over in front of them and the big teeth that just kind of gnash around while they're
Hmm.
swimming in the air horrifically.
Yeah. Which, again, it's sort of a, how does this make sense outside of a dungeon context? It doesn't. Is it fun to mess around with? Yes. Um, they're not as deadly as gelatinous cubes, but they can move a party along, because when the question is, there seems to be a mass of water coming down the hallway, do you want to swim through it and try to hope the exit is close on the other side, or you can let the
Yeah, how
wall
much do
of
you want to
water.
press your luck? Because this is a dungeon and it's full of dangerous hazards.
Right. So it's like, okay, maybe fine, the game master wants us to move along, wall of water, push.
Oh gosh, and then it's when the PCs come up with an idea and they're like, well, that room is filled with clacker beetle swarms. And that room has got some kind of monster that we really can't deal with because it's too
Yes.
much for us. How do we get point A to
Okay.
point B and then profit?
Those are some of the best moments as a player. It's like, I've got it. All the pieces are here.
And then you as the GM are like, this was not what but you know what? I'm going with it because this
I'm
is
going with it because
hilarious.
this is a hilarious plan and it just might work.
So there you go. Game master tips for the Scarlet Citadel: build a Rube Goldberg machine to allow the clacker beetles to go from the area with the monster you're trying to kill.
Yes. Well, the other thing, I mean, from the player perspective, it's a region of tombs. Yeah, I won't say any more about that. There's traps, there's treasures. There's a reason the players wanted to get into the Clacker Caverns. Let's say that.
Yes, there's a thing that sends them. MacGuffin. I don't know. Maybe that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. Have we hit all the stretch goals though? I mean, that one we haven't funded yet. We got to be honest about that. The Clacking Caverns is still like 20K away, right?
Yeah, it is. We're at 112 and Clacking Caverns is at 140. It's the last one that we currently have put out there, but it's not the last one that we have planned in case we end up going above and beyond in the last few days
Right.
of the Kickstarter. So there's a few others that we haven't unlocked yet. One thing that I think is really fun about this project that's being unlocked is secrets. The idea that there are secrets that are propelling things that are happening in the Citadel, and we're revealing them almost in a teaser type of way on the Kickstarter project, but they'll be incorporated into the game as well, into the adventure.
Yes.
And we've unlocked a number of secrets. One of them was owlbears, and it was about what the owlbears are like in the Citadel. And we actually had a discussion about what do we call these owlbears, because they're not just owlbears, right, Wolfgang?
No, they're not just owlbear. Well, they're owlbears, but
Yes.
they're bigger and meaner, and they've got magic items associated with them. And I mean, the term dire owlbear
came up.
Yes, because, well, I think it started in 3rd edition with the dire everything.
That was totally a 3rd edition thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Which was a fun way to say
a big, scarier version of a wolf.
Bigger, scarier version of the thing we just already have. But, owlbears bred by dwarves to be more ferocious and battle-hardened seems scarier to me than owlbears that just amble around in the woods looking for, deer and hives and things to eat. So the dwarves, being sort of mercenary bastards, did breed for the toughest. And I guess I'm going to spoil a little of the stuff that's in the backer update, but they kind of did dogfights, but with owlbears.
Can I talk about the owlbear fights?
I feel like I'm going to get in trouble with the SPCA, right? But they're imaginary animals. They're no
real.
But yes, these dwarves did in fact have owlbear fights and choose a champion.
They did. Yep. And they trained them and they fed them special things, and it's probably their fault that their disgusting bezoars are actually magic items. I think we should blame the dwarves for that.
Well, the dwarves probably feed them like special, how like when you have a Kentucky Derby horse or whatever, right? It gets the finest food, it gets everything, vitamins,
Yeah.
I don't know what they give them. I'm sure these owlbears were fed things that, yeah.
We will just hand wave over the things that could be fed to the owlbears. Somebody in chat has mentioned dire kittens. We will not mention dire kittens in the context of what the dire owlbears eat.
No.
Because
Let's
that's
say
not okay, and we love kittens
like,
at Kobold Press.
they got some like potions, right? They probably got
potions. It's
strengthening
magic.
potions and magic. So that probably infuses their bezoars, right?
That's right. Also, they have badass armor. These are armored owlbears.
Armored owlbears. And so by the time a few generations, many generations of these owlbears turned into the Citadel owlbears, you don't want to meet one of them.
And Citadel owlbears is a phrase that you all come to be familiar with as you are going through the Scarlet Citadel adventure. So yeah, that stuff is coming up. We also have got the Secret of Scarlet Mead is something that we also unlocked on the backer update.
Did talk about that a little. I don't know. Well, all right. We just did the whole secret of the owlbears. Maybe we tell a little less of the Scarlet Mead, but it is a wizard's tower, right?
Yes.
And Gellert the Gruesome is the person in charge.
Yes, which Steve talked about last week. So
okay,
if you're going to be
so
mad
we
at
won't repeat that.
Steve.
Right. But it's a mead, and it's got something in it that kind of bright red, kind of thread-like. It could be, flowers, bits of saffron. It could be trails of blood. It's red stuff. Gellert the Gruesome knows what it is. But drinking it...
Yeah, it provides a little fire in the belly, and not just from the alcoholic content.
No, more like, oh God, I think it's a Pink Floyd album cover I'm thinking of here, where two people in suits are shaking hands, and one of them's on fire.
Yeah. And one of them drank Scarlet Mead.
One of them drank Scarlet Mead, because that's pretty much what it is, right? You get control over fire, and you get this halo of fire, and you leave fiery footprints, and everything you touch catches fire, and it's the kind of thing that
the worst heartburn ever after you drink Scarlet Mead.
Yes.
You don't want to, cover your mouth if you're going to burp, because that might be a minor breath weapon.
Right? But if you're a big weird wizard who just wants to impress the locals, right?
Yeah.
You drink some of this, you walk into the nearest village, you say, I'm in charge. They all say, you're on fire, sir. And
and they say, excuse you, that's a medical condition.
Yeah, it's a pre-existing condition you've got there, Mr. Wizard.
Oh, thank you to this Matt Young in chat, who has told us that the album cover you mentioned is indeed a Pink Floyd cover called Wish You Were Here.
Yes, it was Wish You Were Here.
Yes.
My God. And I
Google that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy on fire, and he's probably, we're just going to say, because Pink Floyd's not here and they can't tell us otherwise, that he drank Scarlet Mead.
Well, the formula for it might be somewhere in Gellert's notebooks. It might be somewhere in the alchemical lab level of the Citadel. I think at some point it's possible that, that recipe could be recreated, or it could be found as a treasure. But it's one of those items that's unique to a location, right?
Yes.
Nobody else makes this stuff.
This Matt Young says Scarlet Floyd, which I think is...
pink is all very nice, but we decided to up the saturation, and
that's so much more metal. Well done, Matt Young.
Yes.
You know what we're really doing? We're really setting up a bunch of adventuring parties to become brewmasters and to run their own business right outside the Scarlet Citadel while they're brewing the Scarlet Mead from the recipe that's, hundreds of years old, found within the Citadel itself. We're setting up brew barons. So sorry, GMs. Sorry, not sorry.
Have you ever had that pyromaniac player who just won't stop setting things on fire?
I have been that pyromaniac player, sir.
Okay, very good then. Arson as a business model. Nice inn you've got here.
This
Shame
all
if
might have been an elaborate plan laid for years and years, and now I can finally have an in-game reason to set people on fire with my breath weapon.
Well, I mean,
at the same time.
yes, there's a bunch of fun items like this. I mean, the nice thing about Gellert the Gruesome is he really just does love magic, and he has no end of magical power at his disposal.
A mad wizard, right? I mean, he's kind of the
He's
mad ogre.
totally, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
take your pick of the mad wizards from other settings. He's very much in that tradition. He likes turning people into beetles, for one thing.
Beetly beetles. Oh, yeah, it's probably because he has that vendetta against the clacker beetles. He's just trying to compete and get them out of his rooms.
If you really
Nobody's
want to
gonna
mess
eat
with the
them all.
druid, right? Like the clacker beetles are all people that Gellert has turned into clackers. They're
And
all human. They were all human.
oh, that's awesome. That's got a very like Aladdin vibe, right? Like the
Uh,
genie's cave, all the genies.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the
Yes.
people that are bound to the lamps. That's really cool.
Yes. So yeah, Gellert's awful. He does terrible things.
He's kind of a
Somebody should, yeah, someone should go in there and take care of him.
someone really should, but the people of
Someone else,
the village
not
can't
them.
handle it. They need heroes.
Yes.
And here's where I play my 80s song and Victoria yells at me because it's copyright and I can't do that on the internet. She's
Oh.
wagging her finger back there. Hi, Victoria.
Well, our fans who remember that song from the 80s will know. They can crank it. It's like
Yep.
Night Ranger? No, but it's like of that era, isn't it?
Yeah. Holding out for a hero is what
Holding
I'm
out for, yeah, that's the
Holding Out for a
one.
Hero. Oh my gosh, who even sang that song? Somebody will put it
Someone in chat will know.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we're 40 minutes in. Should we take a question? Do we have any questions in chat, or should we just continue? Because there's still more stuff we haven't even talked about.
Yeah, we have we've had a few questions here and there, and we've already answered those. But if we didn't do a good enough job, let us know how much we suck, or don't. Let us know what you want to know. Otherwise, we are more than happy. Bonnie Tyler, thank you very much. I kept thinking of a name I knew was wrong. Bonnie Tyler, Holding Out for a Hero, like 1983 or something like that.
Which was a very good year for D&D.
That's true. And there's so much in this adventure that evokes things from that era that I think is really fun because you don't have to have experienced that yourself as a player. I mean, I certainly didn't. I was born in 1987. But
I'm here for the old as the hills contingent. Thank you.
And introducing this to new generations of players as well. I mean, there's a reason that stuff is classic. It's fun, it's infinitely replayable, and it allows a lot more story building and telling than some of the stuff that is a little more modern in the way that it's scripted.
Yeah, I think you bring some of your own fun to it, but the Scarlet Citadel also has a bunch of stories woven through it. Some of them come up from the lore, some of them come from particular figures in the history and items they left behind, and some of it's about frankly nasty villains who just have plans in the present day, right? Stuff on that bottom level we keep hinting at.
Yes, that we're not allowed to talk about.
No, not this week. Maybe Steve will spill it next week, but
maybe he will. Oh, yeah. I know Steve has got some pretty diabolical plans for some stuff that he has already put into motion.
He has, and I'm 100% in favor.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple more things that we haven't mentioned that we may unlock depending on just folks' interest. And if you want to see some of these things that we're talking about unlocked, please do share this link with your friends, with your various role-playing groups. Let folks know what it is. Send them to the Kickstarter project if you would, because we are updating very regularly and answering questions and comments and things like that. We love to hear from you, regardless of your level of interest in the project. So the two things that we have not quite yet unlocked is we've got Midgard Magic Ley Lines, a PDF that we'll be unlocking for backers at 120,000. And we've also got another secret.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy to talk about the ley lines piece.
Yeah, let's do that because we have been putting that together.
Yeah, it's a very meaty magic supplement, which takes the Midgard specific stuff. about ley lines,
Yes.
which is in the Midgard World Book and is available to players, right, to tap into that source of power. And it puts it together in a, I don't know, 20 some page PDF, I want to say.
Yeah, 24, I think, by the time all is
24,
said and done.
somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know that the final layout is anywhere locked, but and it combines it with some material that Nick Landry wrote,
Yes.
expanding ley lines on the Kobold Press blog over the last
Which
6 months?
about 6 months, yep. And the last installment of that series went live last week. So you can
Right.
actually go on the Kobold Press blog. It should be there pretty prominently because it's only been a few days. And there's actually a little tag that is called, I think it just says Leyline Magic, and you can click on that and all of the entries in the series come up.
Right. So you can see it all there. But what we hear from people with series like this is, oh my God, that was a lot of fun. I kind of wanted, I copy pasted it into my DM's notebook, or I handed it to a player who's interested in this stuff. But wouldn't it be nice if it were just put in some nice, printable, easily retained format,
Yes.
and cleaned up a little from being blog entries to being a little tighter edit, a little more developed, and combined with the leyline stuff that's in the Midgard World Book, right? So you have it all in one place as a package.
Yep.
So we throw it out there as a stretch goal, but honestly, it's like a 20-page expansion to a Magic system.
Yeah.
Or and if you're playing Midgard in particular, leyline stuff is a little bit scattered around. I think that's why Nick started writing the series. Is A, he wanted to tweak some things and grow it, but B, it was a little bit here and a little bit there, and it sort of condenses it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that one, partly because I'm going to wind up using it.
Yes, because you're going to wind up using it. Yes, and like you mentioned, so there's all of the blog material, which greatly expands upon what the ley lines are and how you can use them and things that you can do with them, some feats and spells and things like that. But also there's the original tables that have been published in a few different places. But these are tables that depend on the strength of the ley line. There's a strong, I believe there's 3 different tables. There's like a strong, medium.
There's weak, strong, and titanic.
Titanic is the word, yes, that I was searching for.
And the Titanic ones are the ones that converge near the Scarlet Citadel. Just 3 of them.
So reading that will definitely give you some background as to why that's such a big deal and what potential there is for magical energies and activity there, even without the Scarlet Citadel. And then, of course, you've got this massive citadel that has all of this stuff in it, including dire owlbears.
Yes.
So we've got that coming, which we hope to unlock as folks find the project and are interested. We've also got the Secret of the Black River, which we've actually peppered references to that in various updates throughout the project.
The Black River goes way back in my campaign. So this is, I think I ran it first at Gamehole, like 2015, 2016. And it runs through a lot of places besides the Scarlet Citadel. So I'm not going to give away the secret of the Citadel with the Black River because there's a particular connection there and we haven't unlocked it, so I can't talk about it. But I will talk about the Black River as a unifying thing for the underworld, which is kind of what it is.
So it's not really a spoiler to say that it's underground.
It is underground. And in my mind, at least, every time I decide to introduce it, it's a little branch, a little tributary, a tiny wee little bit of like the river Styx, right?
Yep. Yeah.
It flows to dark, dark places.
And where it comes from is a dark mystery, and where it goes is a dark mystery that we may be able to reveal.
Yes.
Unlock this.
I think we're going to get to that 125 level in the final push or sooner.
Yes.
But certainly would love to see that unlock. Yeah. It's a great way to tell players, basically. So you found something, You can't just walk down the hall. You're going to need to change to another mode and kind of throw the dice, right? Like once the current carries you down river, how are you getting back?
Yeah, maybe some bad times will be had at that point.
Or
So
potentially some vast treasures found, right? I mean,
potentially as well, yeah. So I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I am merely going to point out that for those of you paying close attention, we've been revealing several art spoilers on the Kickstarter update page. One of them is titled The Black River, and it has a giant octopus in it, and there are PCs fighting the giant octopus. So again, no spoilers about what's in the river, or what its purpose is, or why it's there, but you know, octopi happen.
they do. And there are some octopoid monsters in Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex as well. So those with a keen eye toward artistic detail might also
Yes.
find something there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're interested in seeing, you know, how comprehensive are the is this book with some of the other publications that we've done, you can check out those art updates. We tell you what the monsters are. They're often typically from one of our best series, and we'll talk about what their abilities are and what book you can find them in and things like that. So there's a lot of cool tie-ins for folks who are fans of the various lines that we've got out there.
But we're going to make sure the stats are available. You don't need to buy the bestiary to
That's
play the Scarlet Citadel. You just want to buy the bestiary.
because there's so many other cool, crazy things.
Well,
It's a
they're like,
Gargan octopus?
yes,
Gargoctopus or something like
Gargoctopus,
that? Yeah.
which I remember was actually a monsters design contest we did ages
Oh my
ago.
gosh, I remember that now, and that never clicked for me.
And the moment I saw the art, I'm like, oh, right. Steve was the judge of that monster contest who loved this monster so much.
And
He
you
was like,
know that at
tried to
that moment he went, I'm putting that in an adventure.
put that in an adventure. I'm like, all right, Steve. That
That's
seems
what
like
you
a good,
do. Like,
right?
dang it, I do what I want.
I wish I could remember the name of the person who wrote it. It was a really nice
Oh,
bit of
well,
design. Oh, well.
we'll have to remember that and throw that up on the Kickstarter when that comes to
Yes,
mind.
yes. But sometimes it loops back around like years later, right? You put a little bookmark in it. You say, man, I want to run that encounter.
Yeah.
And for Steve, this was a case where it actually 3 years later
Yeah.
it happened.
Yeah, you remember things as a designer. I totally understand.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, for sure. Active Nick is in chat mentioning that they are interested in finding a way to incorporate the adventure into their campaign. Their players are already level 4 and will be a bit higher by the time this publishes. They're also playing in the Northlands currently. I would like to point out that this adventure, Scarlet Citadel, does go up to level 10. So if there's a way that you'd like to pull it into that area, or maybe there's a reason that the PCs go more toward where this is canonically, you've still got plenty of stuff you could play through.
Yeah, no, I mean, it may be that by the time this hits, if you're playing every week 4-hour sessions, right, that group may in fact be like just a bit too powerful to tackle this. But it may be that you're ready to start a new game fairly soon.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you know, folks go at different paces, and
people go at different paces, and it's also possible to say the first level or two is too easy, right? Or abandoned, or some other party came and ripped through the first level, cleaning out all the first and second level tier stuff, right?
yeah. Or well, Steve talks about this a lot. The monsters from lower levels that are of a higher CR have moved in because adventurers cleared out the lower level stuff and they figured that they wanted to know what was going on. So that's an option as well.
There is, I'll give this away. Maybe Steve talked about it when he was on last week. I didn't catch it. But he does talk about restocking the Scarlet Citadel.
He does. Yeah. He talks about, oh, you know, just the fact that there's a lot of subplots going on and groups that have a certain agenda with other groups. And, you know, one doesn't get along with the other and they're always at each other. And so there's just changes that happen within the ecology of the dungeon, which is a really fun and interesting thing and dynamic.
Right. And a group that decides we're going to clear out 2 levels and then wanders away to some other region for a month or two may come back and, oh, we're gonna have to clear that out again
Yep.
at a higher level.
Yeah, maybe something worse is here this time because, our GM hates us. Oh gosh. Well, we've only got a few more minutes here on Scarlet Citadel Wednesday. So get your questions in. We will be happy to answer them as we can in the next few minutes. And you can catch us next week as well when we'll have Steve Winter on, the author of the dungeon. So I already see a question from Active Nick who says, when do we anticipate the playtest for backers will start?
That's an excellent question. I don't know that we're going to playtest start to finish. We're going to playtest set piece encounters that Steve hasn't already playtested and that haven't gone through sort of an internal review. But it could happen fairly quickly. It's a matter of, as usual, asking who's interested and sending them a packet. But I would tell people who want to playtest the whole thing that it's going to take a long time to playtest everything. So basically, my view is we're going to test the boss monsters. We're going to test final encounters. We're going to test a couple of the traps just to make sure we think we have them balanced right. But some of them are coming from 3rd edition or 4th edition versions that were scribbled on a note card, right? So Steve has been taking a very professional look at it. He loves running the numbers. And if you know Steve's designs, you know that he errs on the side of, well, if it's a little too tough, it's good for them.
Yep. Growing pain, right, kids?
Right? Like, this is how you become a smarter adventurer. You don't fall into that trap in the first place.
Steve is the king of get good, son.
Get good, son is very much his attitude, which means the playtest will be a lot about, please take an average party, your party, and walk them into this death pit and see if they walk out, right? Like, so we're going to be testing lethality a little bit, just to make sure we don't TPK everything. We want like a 90% TPK rate, but 10% should survive.
A few survivors probably okay, I guess.
I guess. I don't want to make it, we want the I beat the Scarlet Citadel t-shirt to be a thing 5 years from now.
Oh, that's a great idea. That could be a fun, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. That could be a fun little convention thing. We could run an encounter. If you survive, we'll give you a t-shirt. If not, I get to kill you.
Characters die. I think who's Killer Breakfast? Oh, Tracy Hickman's
that
Killer.
was Tracy and Laura, yeah.
Tracy and Laura, Killer Breakfast. And there's something to be said for that, as long as the people walking in know what they're getting.
Yes, it's advertised. I mean, Tracy's breakfast has been advertised for years. I mean, that's been going on at least 10 years, if not more, at Gen Con.
Gen Con. And it's a lot of fun, right? Everybody goes for breakfast. Everybody has a character. Everybody's character is dead in 20 seconds.
And they loved every second of it.
Every second of it. I don't think we're quite that lethal, but yeah, the purpose of this playtest will be specific encounter balance.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, let's see. We have just a couple minutes left, and I don't see any more questions. So, is there anything else that you would like to follow up on about that? We've got how many days we got left? 8. Yeah,
about 8 days left. We're ending a week from Friday, like in the morning. I think this is going to be one of those dungeons, frankly, that people years from now are all going to say, oh yeah, I backed it, I remember, etc. Like, everything that's gone into it is sort of years of notes and what works, and an amazing cartographer. I'm sure you've talked about John Pintar's stuff.
Yes, we have, absolutely. Mark and I talked about that mostly on his stream.
I mean, just like, the joy of this particular dungeon is it's kind of what you're getting with it as a backer is other people's sort of homebrewed but tested and then professionally polished and then developed, and then it's the kind of dungeon where the encounters have they've got multiple ways to resolve them. They've got
creativity is
creativity, flavor, and a real spike of it could kill everybody, because because there are some places that are extremely lethal, and you got to play smart. But there's also a lot of, well, it's those darn beetles. Do we want to fight them or do we want to walk?
It's when you have the players as the GM, you just say, and you hear the sound on the other side of the door. And the players just go, no,
not again. Nope, not that room.
Nope,
Did
nope,
it.
Nope.
We are out of oil. We are out of torches. Yeah. We're going somewhere else. We can come back later.
The big dungeon of nope.
I think it's a dungeon that frankly just has resonances and themes and stories that are going to stick to people, and you're going to get some interesting memories out of it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
If you run all 10 levels, fantastic. And if you get wiped on level 4, hey, you gave it a good run.
Yep. Make level 5 adventurers and go back and pick up the pieces of the guys who failed.
Right? Like you heard, this party went and they never came back, but this is their map. I swear you can have it for 50 gold.
Yep, exactly.
Pass the torch, as it were.
Yeah, and that's a good metaphor to close us out on. Thank you all so much for joining us on Scarlet Citadel Wednesdays with our Kobold in Chief here, Wolfgang Baur.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody backing it. We're super pleased with how this project's going.
Yeah, we're very excited, and we are looking forward to seeing where the last 8 days takes us with this. Thank you all again for joining us, and next week join us with Steve Winter, who is the designer of the Scarlet Citadel. He will be here to answer all of your questions and talk about how many PCs he's planning on killing in each section. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Take care.